guys, going on? Welcome back to another Elestrals Moonrise reaction video. This is an interesting video because this is our first non-lunar episode. We have 5 new fire Elestrals coming to Moonrise. Interesting to see what they're going to be able to do to fire, because fire has consistently been like the worst element. They have Lavalith, and that's like it. So I'm interested to see what exactly they're able to actually do with that. So yeah, let's get on into the video.
It's time for us to turn up the heat with some brand new fire cards as we count down every single day until Moonrise pre-orders open on November 15th. Let's get it.
So let's quickly talk about sort of, I'm getting a lot of videos. Hang on, what's going on? I don't care. Okay, we're good. So let's quickly talk about some of the weaknesses with fire. As a person that's played a little bit of fire, I know a little bit about some of the weaknesses, but correct me if I'm wrong in the comments if you think there are potentially other weaknesses. For the most part, fire struggles a lot with sticking a guy to the board. There aren't that many ways to, like, realistically, there are a couple of good fire cards, fire Elestrals more specifically. Kinleo, Nekruff, Comagma, Lavalith, and Ash Rabbit. Those are like the 5 most powerful fire Elestrals. Ramacola as well to a certain extent, but it's not nearly as powerful as some of the other cards in fire. And these 5 cards form basically the backbone of Fire Nexus. Fire Nexus is a deck that focuses on using Kinleo to nexus onto your Comagmas or your Ash Rabbits in order to not only pop an opponent's Elestral, just basically Earthquake, it also gives them their effects. The issue with this is Lavalith just got limited, so the deck is already much worse than it already is. Nekruff is not as powerful of a card as you might think it is. It seems very good, but it's not the most powerful thing in the world, so that's why a lot of people actually, when they play Nekruff, they just enchant it with water, and that's that. Also, Comagma and Ash Rabbit are the 2 receive Elestrals, but both of them facilitate a deck that Fire does not really want to be. Fire wants to be this super aggressive deck that focuses on destroying all your opponent's cards and then getting in for a boatload of damage super early on. That's like why Lavalith is super good in Fire, because not only can it summon itself with it's a 6 attacker that can just summon itself for free, it can also pop a rune to potentially prevent your opponent from getting a bunch of runes off, and also with the Kinleo stuff, being able to blow up your opponent's board with Nexuses. However, Comagma draws 1, discards 1 on receive, and Ash Rabbit grabs 1 of 3 cards that you choose from your underworld to your hand, and your opponent gets to pick which one you want to you add to your hand. So not only does Ash Rabbit give your opponent agency and what you get, you are not always, the card is very situational and when it's good and when it's bad. And for the most part, it's bad because you're giving your opponent a bunch of agency. So it's not really a good card for that. And both Comagma and Ash Rabbit facilitate basically recursion, but that's not really what Fire wants. Fire wants more ways to destroy the board. So if a card says like on receive, lower an opponent's attack by like 2, maybe it can be very powerful. But we're gonna have to see. I already know a couple of these, by the way, because some of them were in creative boxes. So we'll see if they're like the same thing.
You actually get early access to these reveals 1 day early, so don't miss out. But let's talk about these brand new fire Elestrals that are coming to Moonrise.
Let's
First up is a familiar friend.
Let me actually real quick turn up the volume. I think it's kind of quiet.
Cinder is back with 3 attack and 2 defense, and you know this card as a super essential piece to the mill strategy. Every time Cinder receives 1 or more fire spirits, your opponents must send the top 3 cards from their deck to the underworld. This allows you to use Nexus and other mechanics to get spirits onto Cinder and force your opponent to mill cards every single time, and you can whittle their entire deck down as an alternate win condition. Now, this card is coming back in Moonrise because it has a brand new Ascension, Salashade. I personally always felt like the Cinder line needed a little bit bit extra, and we decided to create Salashade to ascend from it with a brand new element added to it. It is Fire and Lunar, and while it doesn't have the most daunting attack and defense stat at 3 and 3, this brand new Fire and Lunar Elestral can do some serious work because it's going to get +1 attack for each Elestral in your opponent's underworld. So if you're playing against somebody and you force them to mill and they continue to mill cards into their underworld, this card gets to astronomical attack levels as the game progresses. When a player casts an Elestral, you or your opponent, must send the top 3 cards of their deck to the underworld. So Salashade has the opportunity to force your opponent to continue to mill themselves every time you or they cast Elestrals to the field, ultimately making Salashade even stronger every single time they do that. This next
So, I'll be honest, I don't think this card's very good. They're trying to make Mill playable, and I understand why they're trying to make Mill playable, because currently Mill is like a very bad deck. It's not even close to like playable. Like you can play like maybe Ruminous and stuff like that, but it doesn't really do anything. Lumaru with some Mill. But like this doesn't feel like it does anything to me for the most part. Getting +1 attack, the issue with Salashade is that this card is incredibly bad early game, because early game your opponent might have what, like 1, 2, maybe 3 Elestrals. It gets +1 attack. It's still at 3 defense, so you can just very easily Tsunami it and attack over it. It's not very good for that reason. It's a very easy card to out. And to be entirely honest, if it's that easy to out, I don't think the second effect is very good. Late game, I could see this being pretty decent because you and your opponent are already low on spirits. They really have to conserve their spirits. So if you cast this guy into the board, it's already going to have a bunch of attack because you've milled them a good chunk. And then you're threatening to mill them even more. And it's going to have a boatload of attack, and it's going to be harder to swap it to defense position because of the less spirits. So early game, this sucks. Late game, I could see potential, but I don't think this is a card that you really want to sit on for that long, especially since Mill is not a deck that really strives with keeping bodies on board a whole lot of the time. You can potentially do it, but it's not like the best. It's not super easy in Mill in comparison to other decks. So I don't think this card's very good because it's only good late game, and late game is going to be difficult to actually get it out onto the board. So unfortunately, I gotta say this card's not very good. Let's move on to the next guy.
Ultimately making Salashade even stronger every single time they do that. This next Fire Elestral is going to allow those fire decks to go even more aggro, and that is Bellowbee. I absolutely...
So that's good. Allow them to go more aggro. This is what Fire wants. Let's see how good this card actually is.
Love Bellobee's design. One of my favorite new Elestrals in Moonrise. This has 2 attack and 2 defense, but a really incredible effect. Fire and Wind enchanted Elestrals get +1 attack, including itself. So you can pair this up with Wind Elestrals or Fire Elestrals and give them a nice buff. Okay. You can also target them as his active effect and give them the effect the Elestral is unaffected by counter runes until the next turn. That means if you pair Bellowbee with a strong Elestral next to it and it has a Wind or a Fire Spirit on it, you can target them and make them immune to counter runes until the next turn. That is incredibly powerful, and you're also giving them attack buff. This card is a great supporter card for fire decks, and I look for Bellowbee to be strong not only in Moon...
I'm undecided as to how good this is. This has potential to go like really far. And obviously this card is searchable. It's searchable off of Smoltuga. It's searchable off of Stoke the Forge. There are many ways to get to this alongside the other card that you can give it. I'm a little confused by the wind thing. I assume its ascension is fire wind, which if that's the case, I can understand why it also affects wind. But I don't think this card's going to see play in wind, first of all, because wind is just not a deck that cares for attack buff. But the second effect is obviously the star of the show here. This is the one that's interesting. The first effect, I'm going to be honest, first effect is bad. It's a 2/2 that gives your Elestrals +1 attack. It's going to put this guy up to a 3. It's also should be noted, it's not +1 attack per spirit on it. It's just flat +1 attack. You can have a Trifernal out here with 5 attacks. Guess what? This is giving it +1. So that effect's not good. The second effect is kind of interesting. So the issue, again, that I have mentioned with Fire currently is that Fire is a deck that wants to utilize its cards to destroy the board. Typically your Elestrals, not really your runes. This doesn't provide that. This is a Bellowbee is a card that will make you unaffected by counter runes. Just make it so that one of your guys can attack without having to worry about something. But I think the fact that it has to target an Elestral, you have to pair it with something. Granted, you can target itself, but it's going to be a 3 attacker. Maybe if you pair it with like Volcanic Forge, it could be a 4 attacker. I don't think that's very good. I don't think this card's super amazing. We'll see its Ascension, assuming it has one. I don't think this card is very good, though.
Moonrise, but for sets to come, I think this card has a lot of potential, and I can't wait for you guys to get your hands on it. Bellowbee does ascend to a brand new Elestral and kind of ties in that beautiful synergy with Wind with a new Elestral called Infernax. Infernax is a 4-attack Elestral that is fire and wind enchanted with...
Can I just point out that does not look like it's wind? How is that wind? What a part of this card is wind? I don't see the wind. I'm sorry.
7 defense. It has a really cool effect that says you can expend a wind spirit in order to return an opponent's card to their hand. So you can bounce cards back to their hand, and when you cast an Elestral or rune with at least fire or wind, you can give this Infernax +2 attack until the end phase. So the turn...
Should be noted that second effect is not once per turn because, again, it's a when effect. The first effect is actually interesting. I don't think this card is super amazing in the fire deck that we are currently playing, but we can definitely change our deck building principles to make a bit of a fire wind deck. I think for the most part, what we can do is play Infernax in the existing fire deck, but drop a couple of the cards that we are currently playing and throw in like P-Gust in there as well to facilitate some more rune removal. And then if you're ever able to get an Infernax on board, expend the wind, return the opponent's card to the hand. That's basically Elestral removal. It facilitates the strategy that I feel like Fire wants to go for. So we can do a little bit of like, this card has a little bit of potential. I don't feel like it's going to be that good just because of the fact that I feel like Fire nowadays... Again, deck building principles could change, but Fire currently is a deck that wants to focus on their small guys in order to just do everything. So I'm not the most convinced by this. I'm really hoping for a new Receive Elestral for Fire that can synergize with Kinleo for the current existing Fire deck that we have. But we can definitely like change some deck building principles for Fire specifically to facilitate a different style of strategy for this card in particular. I see this card potentially... I can see that this card has potential. So I think it could be very good. The only issue that I think this card has is that if you want to really use that second effect to its fullest extent, you have to activate it on your turn to get its attack up to like 6, maybe 8, maybe even upwards of 10. I highly doubt you're activating 3 runes or casting 3 Elestrals. Maybe you can. I'm not entirely certain. But you get it up to that decent attack. 6 is also perfectly fine attack-wise. But then when it's your opponent's turn, this card is stuck in attack, and then you have to use a rune to put it into defense or just let it get attacked over by 5. So that's sort of the issue. I feel like this is a very good card on your turn, and it's terrible on your opponent's turn because you have to invest so many resources to keep it alive during your opponent's turn that I don't think this card is super amazing for that reason. I'm having a difficult time placing this one. I feel like it's not the best, but I could see it has potential. So that's just what I'm gonna say. Has potential, but I don't think it's good.
Turn he's cast out, he's actually going to get a nice little buff, and then every time you cast an Elestral or a rune, you can buff him up even stronger. So if you're utilizing a card like, let's say, Gorgon's Gaze, or let's say Shield of Achilles, or any of those typical cards, and you're utilizing Fire and Wind Spirits on your opponent's turn, you can buff up...
Okay, that's fair. I didn't even think about that. I'm dumb. Guys, I'm dumb. Don't worry about me.
You're in Fornax as well. So some really cool potential with this card. I think this card could actually see some really significant play, especially with Bellowbee entering the meta. I'm really excited to see the synergy.
I will say, even with that little bit of information that I had that I just completely overlooked, I still don't think this card is the best. It's a pretty expensive card. It's a card that requires you to spend a bunch So I don't think it's super amazing for that reason.
Between fire and wind come together here in
but
Moonrise.
Still, it has a lot
Get
of
excited,
potential.
but we're not even done. I've got one more Elestral to reveal, and that is Torchin. Torchin will be one of our holo rares in Moonrise, and this Elestral was first revealed through Elestriad Season 1, and I just love him. I feel like he really carries the spirit of Elestrals, and this is a card that you're going to see a lot of. I really love Torchin. It's a 1 attacker with 1 defense with a super cool effect. You guys have been asking me for a fire heal card, so I gave you Torchin, man.
Yeah.
When this Torchin declares an attack, you return fire spirits from your underworld to your spirit deck up to the number of enchanting fire on your field. So if Torchin's your only thing and you attack, you get to heal 1. That doesn't seem like very good. But if you pair it with a divine rune like Hephaestus with 4 spirits on it, you have the opportunity to heal 5 by simply attacking. And you might say, hey, Drop, how is Torchin going to attack when it only has 1 attack? Well, don't forget, you can attack into defense position Elestrals and just have nothing happen because...
So, okay, he's talking about this.
There's no damage that you're taking. You're just not knocking them out. I'm just saying, you can attack with Torchin into those defense position Astravits and make them punished, healing yourself up for 5 spirits with a Hephaestus. You guys can have fun with this one. I love Torchin. I hope you guys are excited for it.
Okay, let me just get the full screen of Torchin real quick. So, I have an interesting opinion in I think about this card. So, let me quickly pull up what it is. Somebody left a comment. I don't remember the name, so I gotta real quick pull it up. On one of my videos, it was for the very first day. No, second day. Was it Lunar Phase? No, it was this one. The first one where we got like Hypnosum announced and all that. They said Hypnosum would go crazy with the main phase 2. Otherwise, I don't see the vision. I responded to them being like, exactly. The thing that confuses me is the most powerful. The most is the more powerful cards are typically given to lower status Elestrals, or at least that's part of the vision. Hypnosum's a 1/1, so are they expecting the effect to be OP? So basically what I'm saying there is, I think Hypnosum is a bad card because I don't think it's a 1/1, and I think it has a very bad effect. I don't think there's any deck in the game that wants the effect that it has. So therefore, I'm shocked that it's a 1/1 and not a little higher. I understand that they want the stats to be low because it's a effect that requires it to be destroyed, but just for that, it's a card effect that incentivizes it to be destroyed. I don't think it's very powerful because it doesn't really do anything. They replied back though saying, I had the same thought about Torchin from this set. It seems that is the way they are choosing to balance the card instead of making it a 2 cost, but the effects don't feel OP. So basically, Expository Nerds is also saying how they don't think Torchin is a very powerful card because they're looking at the effect and comparing it to its stats and being like, well, if it's a super low static card, don't you need a super powerful effect? And Torchin just doesn't provide. That's what they're saying. I think this card is a lot better than Hypnosum, but I've got to agree with Expository Nerds. This card is very bad, if I'm being entirely honest. I don't think this card will see any play in Fire unless you really, really need a Fire heal card. I don't see this being played like at all because like what this card does, when it declares an attack, return fire spirit from your underworld to your spirit deck up to the number of enchanting fire in your field. So as A-Drive said, if you attack with just it on the field, you heal for 1. That's not good. If you combine it with a Hephaestus who has 4 on it, in the Torchin, you attack and you heal for 5. That seems very good. But here's the difference though. Here's the issue. If you are in a position where you have Torchin on board with 4 Hephaestus and you're attempting to heal 5, you realistically are only going to do that if you need to heal for 5, which means you have 5 fire spirits in your underworld. It is very unlikely for you to be in a position where you have an equal amount of equal amount of spirits on your board and in your underworld, or like more spirits on your board than in your underworld. It's very rare that you're going to see this. For the most part, I feel like Torchin is going to be in a position where maybe like the best potential position I could see it in is where you've established a bit of a board state where like you have Volcanic Forge is active. You have your Kinleo who is just constantly nexusing on and off of a card. and then you summon Torchin. At the very minimum, that is going to be 5 spirits on board. Torchin's going to be able to go ahead and heal you for 5. In that situation, I feel like this card is very, very good. Because in that position, you've probably already progressed the board set a bit. Both players have probably experienced a lot of different, they've experienced a lot of different spirit removal in the sense that a lot of people will have their spirit decks reduced. Maybe it's you're both looking at like 1 potential spirits in like 1-digit spirit in your spirit deck. The issue with this at the same time, let's say you're in a position where like you have 6 spirits remaining, right? And you're in a position where you have 6 spirits remaining and like 4 of them are fire in your spirit deck. In a position where you have board control and you have a lot of spirits on board, you can normal cast Torchin, attack, swing, and heal for a bunch. That's good. The issue with Torchin is that in order to get its effect super well, you need to have an established board. What that means is that you typically have to be winning in order to get Torchin's effect, which makes Torchin a win more card. And I don't think Fire needs a win more card. I think Fire needs a card that makes their base strategy more efficient. And if I'm being honest, none of the cards that we've seen really help with Fire and what they're going for. Torchin might have potential to be really, really powerful. I personally don't see it. I am seeing down here it is an Exectoid. It would be searchable off of some cards, but it's not the most crazy thing in the world. I don't think the mill cards are super interesting, especially since Fire does not want to play mill. It's just the mill deck has some additional stuff, so Fire is not getting anything from the mill cards. So we're looking at 3 potential new upgrades to Fire. We are looking at Bellowbee, we're looking at Infernax, and we are looking at Torchin. In all of these cards, by far Infernax is the best card that we've seen, but it's an expensive card that doesn't facilitate everything Fire wants. And again, as I said, we can change deck building principles, but I don't feel like Bellowbee really helps that deck building principle. I don't think the new version of Fire would appreciate a Bellowbee. I don't think this card is super amazing. And Infernax is the only thing that I could potentially be seeing play because, as I said before, with Torchin is absolutely a win more card. This card doesn't do anything unless you already have a good establishment of the board. I don't see what they're doing with a lot of these 1/1s. I don't see the vision. They see the vision. I don't really understand what's going on. But guys, we have a little bit more to the video. Is there really anything else? No, he's just talking about Torchin. That's cool. All right, whatever. That's going to do it for this video, guys. I hope you did enjoy. If you did, make sure you slap the like button and subscribe for more. Hope to see you guys in the next video. Goodbye.